My name is Dr. Laura Ridings, and I am the Director of Strive Transitional Living at Safe Harbor Children's Center in coastal Georgia. We've been part of the FISB family since 2017, and I came on board and started the TLP program. And actually, our connectivity with FISB has been long since prior to that, because we also have SOP and BCP, but we started with our third one, TLP, in 2017. We had a 5-year grant. We just wrapped that up, and we were granted for 3 additional years. And I hope to continue that trend. So just so you're familiar with my organization and what experiences we've had. And I'm going to try and put all of my experience as a special educator for 25 years in the classroom, and both as a college professor, to work with this particular presentation as well. And I will explain more about that in a minute. So next. Okay, well, this presentation starts out a little bit on the behind the scenes background, understanding of what self-determination is, but we're going to go through research highlights, as well as curriculum possibilities and assessment for self-determination, and then wind up with a discussion and Q&A. Okay, so what I want to do first, and I don't know if we have, there was one little poll that we were going to do, if that's ready on the other side, that I wanted you to rate yourselves about your familiarity with self-determination. So I gave 4 options, and if for some reason the poll isn't up, then you can just choose one of these and throw it in the chat. Are you very familiar with the topic, somewhat familiar with self-determination? You've heard of it, or you're not familiar with it at all? And I'll give you just a minute to kind of throw that in there so that I can gauge the knowledge that this particular group of people has. So I don't bore you or get too in depth.
Dr. Writing, the poll states that 58% of folks feel somewhat familiar with the topic.
Okay, well, great. That's a good place to be in for this particular presentation. So let's talk about what self-determination is. And if we're looking through a social work lens, the definition that most people agree on is an individual's ability to be in charge of their life, make their own choices, and influence the goals and treatments guiding their journey. So a lot of this has a lot of overlap with person-centered as well. I want to tell you just a little bit about the particular youth that I have pictured here, because when it comes to self-determination, you know, what does that look like in what we do for a living? And I had this this youth come to me quite a few years ago, I'd say maybe in my first or second year of TLP. And this individual's name was Monique. And Monique was attending school, and she had autism, and she was living with a pretty sheltered life with a grandparent, and the grandparent passed away. The school system called me, not knowing what to do. And there weren't any relatives that could take Monique. And she eventually kind of went into crisis because of this situation. So we had met prior to her really being in crisis and welcomed her into TLP. And through her journey, she really experienced a lot of things that she had never experienced before, been places and done things. Pretty soon we got her a bike, and she was riding everywhere, doing everything. And she had a job because she had finished high school, even though she was still at the school for continued services. She was getting training and going through training programs. She had a great experience with her grief therapy, and she had additional therapies as well. And she really started to take charge of her own life. And what is somewhat interesting and unique about this particular journey is she discovered her her need to explore her identity. And in doing so, took us along with her on her transition she became a transgender male. And it was kind of an interesting journey because not only did she educate herself, and goes by Dom now, and he is still part of our Safe Harbor family as a mentor. And Dom took control of his journey and bought books for my whole staff, and they read it together, and he really educated them along the way about this journey. And it was just an amazing thing to see how self-determined Dom became in choosing his life and making those goals. And it was just really, it really made an impact on me as to what we do for a living and how powerful it can be. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So session objectives, I'm not going to read these for you necessarily, but I do want you to gain that knowledge of, some basic research, definitely resources. I've got resources for you for days. We're going to talk about skills and instruction. I'm going to introduce you to some models, specifically the one we use here at Strive Transitional Living, and definitely some authentic examples. I couldn't present with my team or with my youth, but I brought them to you via authentic video clips. With their permissions, I was able to obtain footage of them doing different activities in different groups so that you could really be brought into what we do here at Strive and see that how it was applied to implement self-determination. Next. Okay, so let's bring it back for a minute and talk about resilience, which is the topic of this entire conference. When we talk about resilience, there were two particular pieces of research that jumped out on me, and I'm going to explain those on the next slide. But one in particular, Lee and his colleagues really tried to operationally define resilience. And they kind of came up with resilience can be defined as the process of effectively mobilizing internal and external resources in adapting to or managing significant sources of stress or trauma. Thus, cultivation of resilience means fostering adolescents' capacity, flexibility, and coping strategies as they face developmental changes and life stresses in order to bounce back from difficult life experiences and achieve positive outcomes. Now I was going to go into this little discussion about our opening keynote speaker and how he spoke of persistent trauma. I'll just shorten that to when he talked about the environment and how an environment can have an impact on resilience. Those of us that are trying to change that environment that those youth are in, what can we do to further support them becoming resilient and learning self-determination? And then the notable research that I found was interesting. Well, the most interesting thing about it, it was two different groups of researchers at two different universities, but it was both in the same year and both in the same place. These both came from Hong Kong, and I did not find any relevant research that very specifically tied positive youth development, resilience, and self-determination together. So I focused on these two, and I just wanted to share with you that both of them were developed for school purposes in helping educators learn how to help their students develop self-determination. And so the first one focuses on how schools can promote and enhance resilience and advocates an approach that involves the community and home. And the most interesting thing was their results in that they identified these protective factors, which they defined as optimism, perception of control, self-efficacy, and practicing coping skills. Those things were the difference between those who showed resilience and those who lacked it. So those are all part of what we teach in self-determination in a lot of ways. And then the second research piece was connecting positive youth development and self-determination. And that specifically supported self-determination as a way to bring, elements of that self-determination theory, which is a little more broad. They talk about competence, relatedness, and autonomy needed for academic success and the school setting, that would make them give them the ability to be more successful. They also supported numerous strategies, some of which we'll outline today: self-determination learning model of instruction. I will give you resources on that, although that's not what we use here at Strive, which is fine. Explicit instruction and some other things. And the most important thing is that this not only works for youth with disabilities, but youth without disabilities. Now, as I said, in a school setting, special education focuses heavily on making sure that they have a way to support the self-determination skills of the youth that have disabilities. Well, by and large, self-determination is just as effective for youth without disabilities. So, although we can take a lot of the resources from the education side of things. Okay, next. And last but not least, I have this one piece of research, which I think you will become somewhat interested in. It's adult outcomes for students with cognitive disabilities 3 years after high school. What these particular researchers did, Weimer and Palmer, Weimer is one of, if not the leading and long-term research, #1 researcher in self-determination. He's from the University of Kansas. He contributes to a lot of national things, as well as a lot of the resources you're going to be exposed to today. So he's a top guy. He did a research study, and with the students that had disabilities 3 years after they left high school, it was determined by using this ARC determination or self-determination scale rating. It's an assessment that he developed, that they had greater outcomes. Those that were higher in those scores and ratings had greater outcomes in areas of employment, health, benefits access, financial independence, and independent living. So for these youth that had disabilities, all of those things that we try and strive to do to make kids self-sufficient with transitional living and some of our other programming that we do with FISB, really made an impact to give them a lot of the self-determination skills. So that was pretty interesting. Okay, so these aren't research articles, but they are very significant resources that are out there. And I felt that some of these resources might be outside of your radar because they are essentially, I guess, rooted in education, and they might not have been highlighted for you in the past. So the first one is Promoting Self-Determination, and it's a guide that Health and Human Services Department put together to really assist somebody like you or I that wanted to implement some self-determination strategies to be able to do that. So a consortium of 5 different universities worked on these. So these are notable researchers. It reviews literature and showing evidence and social validity. So if you're ever trying to make the case for self-determination, this is a good resource that kind of compiles some of that for you. It includes a breakdown of the recommended practices. We're going to go over a lot of them. Some are included in this resource and some aren't, but it talks about person-centered and direct instruction strategies, including how do we implement this? Keep in mind, these are strategies that are really focused on the classroom, so you might have to, tweak them to your more residential settings. But the second one is National Secondary Transitional Technical Assistance Center, and that provides information that supports the transition of youth. It discusses the use of evidence-based practices, which we all know is a big factor, and it lists resources for self-determination. And the third one, I'm a little partial toward, in that the Zarrow Institute on Transition and Self-Determination at University of Oklahoma was actually started by my mentor. Way back in graduate school, my first graduate experience 25 years ago. I started as a graduate assistant in the Center for Self-Determination at the University of Colorado. Well, that was with my advisor, my graduate advisor, and one of my teachers, Jim Martin. And Jim, after being several years at CU, went on to OU and started the Zaro Institute on Transition and Self-Determination. So this is a really great resource. It provides free lessons for you. It lists links to assessments and curriculum, and we're going to actually go through some of those, and I'll show you what it lists. Okay. So now that I'm done geeking out a little bit on the research, sorry, I am a PhD researcher, so I really want to talk about and break down the elements of self-determination. When we're teaching kids skills that are for self-determination, what does that really mean? Well, it means that we're really helping them to achieve self-advocacy. We want them to have self-efficacy. Goal setting, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with, that's something we do. Decision-making, and I apologize, that shouldn't be decision-making, that should be self-regulation. I apologize, there was an error that nobody caught, it's so not obvious. And making choices and decision-making, and what are the difference between those two things? Problem solving, and then adjusting. It's like, how do I evaluate my progress, and how do I adjust those goals to reach my final destination? One of the things that I want to do right now is, if you guys could just throw up in the chat box, if you see a particular element of self-determination up here that you feel you maybe aren't giving attention to in your programming, or would like to give stronger attention to, throw it up in the chat box, because I'd like to see, you know, if there's any particular elements that people feel they're less familiar with or less invested in. And I'll keep going, but I'll check back on that as well. I'm going to give you some great examples and show you some videos of these as well. But at Strive, we focus on all of these, of course, but we have taken specific efforts to really follow up with self-efficacy, self-advocacy, regulation. Those are big things for us, because we feel that our kids having not only developmental disabilities, because I have one group home that is developmental disabilities, but trauma as well. Oh yeah, so I see kind of a good mix of those as well on the chat box. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'm going to continue kind of keeping my eye on that chat. All right, so now is kind of the question of, okay, what do we do now? How is it that we, as homeless youth providers, move from the concepts and the research of self-determination to the integration of self-determination into our programming? How do we do that? Well, there's a couple of aspects here. The way we do it is we are person-centered. A lot of us do person-centered type things within our programming. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that in special education, part of our self-determination practices is to have the youth or children be involved as directing their own individual education plans. So in this case, I have applied it to our individual service plans, which if any of you have ever seen an IEP, it is so similar. So being able to be more of the spokesperson for themselves and represent themselves in a collaborative meeting about their goals is so important, instead of listening to some case manager talk about their goals and you know, present it for them. Also using trauma-informed support. Most of us know, you know, what we're talking about when we do trauma-informed. That's a whole nother presentation, so I'm not going to go out there. But the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to use explicit instruction. Sometimes I think people feel like, oh, they're going to get this just as an effect of doing this other activity, or, you know, along the way, they're going to pick these things up. Really, they don't. And especially if they have disabilities, this explicit instruction, that direct teaching of these skills is really necessary. Now, having opportunities for practice and being able to, you know, apply that to different situations is another case. You know, we want them to practice these things, you know, out and about in real life, but understanding it and getting the process down for some of those things, and really being able to have those skills. And it's really something that you have to teach. And then embedding concepts, excuse me. So we begin to embed these concepts. We involve the community in school and the home environments, and we support practice in those authentic environments. If I'm going to take them as a life skills coach to the laundromat and I'm going to teach them how to use the laundry machine, then I really need to encourage them to advocate for themselves when the machine takes their money. I need to encourage them to or I need to support them in problem solving when something goes wrong. And I need to cue them to self-regulate. But I'm not going to teach it there. I'm going to teach it explicitly and then remind them and cue them to use those skills. Okay, next slide. So at Safe Harbor, it's Strive Transitional Living. The activities that we focus on in order to kind of make this explicit instruction come to life, and the practice as well. We use self-efficacy groups, which really focus on a lot of the skills with reflection and being able to have good self-confidence and self-esteem and all of those types of things. We have life skills, and we utilize a lot of community-based instruction, which is exactly what I was talking about with the example of the laundromat. We go in and we instruct it, we practice it. We have goals groups. Now, this one is relatively new. What we started to do is as much as daily as we can. Some of our kids are high schoolers, so we don't get as much time during the day, but as much as daily, we have them sit down and we talk about long-term and short-term goals when we get to those particular time markers that we need to come up with new goals, or as they have the need for them. But even more importantly, we talk about that day. What are you going to do today that's going to impact your goals? Look at those small steps. How are you going to improve those and make another step forward today, this week, next week? And we keep them focused on those goals. We also have coping skills groups, which very explicitly and directly teaches those coping skills. And you'll see a clip of that here in a minute too. And person-centered case management. We take their exact words for their goals directly into their ISPs. We allow them to kind of come up with, the goals that they want, and we do support them in I guess, considering different things that they might not have considered, but we very much let them, I tell them they're driving the train. We're shoveling the coal in, giving them power, but they're driving. And then the self-directed ISPs, that takes a process. When they first come in, it's of course a very minimal participation in that as we get them ready. But by the end, they are pretty much presenting all their goals, and they're talking about, what their next step is and how they got there and all of those things. All right, next slide. Some of you may be wondering, well, what do you guys do? How do you do this at Safe Harbor? And I wanted to give you just a moment to meet our Strive service providers. And obviously I have a team of supervision house staff as well that allow us to give that day in, day out, round the clock. But these are just our service providers. I cannot forget our most important one, Neri, our certified therapy dog, belongs to Meady Watkins. But Neri's been with us from the very beginning. And Neri is a wonderful asset to some of our kids with and without disabilities who have trauma background. Myself, of course, I have my assistant director is an MSW. I have Meady Watkins, she's an LPC. Kimberly May is our housing specialist, she's full-time. I have a human service provider, which is a case manager. We have a dedicated aftercare program that is through the Providing Safe and Stable Families. And that is a full-time aftercare case manager for kids that are in TLP as well as those that aren't. We have a couple of life skills coaches. So we definitely have a team. It's completely a team effort. And, nobody ever says this isn't my job. So we collaborate all the time. And you can go ahead into the next slide. So this is where I want to give you a few minutes to have the experience of talking not only to my LPC who runs some of my groups, but also see some clips of some of the girls in groups. Obviously, the angle of the camera is kind of to protect them not being so directly seen. But I wanted you to see, what does it look like, one of our groups? And this wasn't staged at all. This was just me popping in with a camera and, giving you the ability to see those things. Go right ahead and play. Thank you.
Group involves traditional aspects of therapy where you're always providing support, and you are providing listening to both the content and the emotion of what's going on with that person, but then you're also giving them choices about how to make decisions about what they're going through. So you're teaching coping skills that they can use in a situation in their life. This is a new group rules that we have. I try to keep things very routine. I feel like these girls need safety and stability. So when they come into my group, they know exactly what's going to happen, and it almost runs on autopilot. We do a mood check-in, we do a nickname, we do some good and bad news in their world, and then I try to do something that's just kind of entertaining. But every time we come in, we talk about our rules. We talk about to be safe, how they're emotionally safe and physically safe in the room that we're in. Teaching self-awareness and regulation is essential for these girls to go on and have healthy lives. They need to understand healthy boundaries with others. They need to understand how to find the support they need in healthy ways in their lives. We talk a lot. I use a lot of visuals. We get up and we move around a lot. We use whiteboards. We do drawings. We do lots of different activities with this age group, but I found that these are especially helpful. We talk a lot about boundaries, learning to say no. A lot of these girls have been violated in many ways, and they haven't felt they've been able to stand up for themselves. We talk about confidentiality and how important it is to be able to talk within a safe space in a group. We talk about the 3 C's of CBT, being able to talk about their beliefs and their actions. Self-regulation is a tool that a lot of these girls have not been able to practice prior to coming to Strive. I feel like they were in chaotic environments. I feel like they've moved a lot. They've been to a lot of different schools. There's not been a lot of security and safety. And so learning self-awareness and self-regulation is essential to be able to sit the class at school, to be able to pay attention and follow and complete assignments, to be able to maintain and keep your frustrations and anger and anxiety under control when you're at work or when you're out with friends. So there's a lot of work to be done about just teaching emotions and to teach what you can do in any given environment. Some coping skills that work here at Strive, where they can go take a walk or listen to music or talk to friends. You can't do that when you're at work. You can't do that when you're at school. So that's why we teach a lot of imagery, talking about relaxation techniques. So even if you're in a classroom and you're starting to feel anxious, you can always stop and breathe. You can always stop for a minute and close your eyes and think of a place that makes you happy. Or if you're at work and you're starting to feel frustrated, you can start to practice the coping skills, saying, I'm feeling frustrated right now because I forgot how to use the register. I'm feeling anxious because the money in the register isn't matching what it's supposed to. Can you help me understand? So a lot of these skills the girls haven't used before, so it's just acknowledging that it wasn't their fault. They didn't learn these skills, learning them together, and then going out into the world and practicing them every day. I teach lots of skills like grounding. If they are feeling anxious or overwhelmed, what is something they can do in the moment? Lots of breathing. We teach lots of techniques. So we do box breathing, which is 5, 5, 5, 5. We talk about how they use these skills in the military. That's a great hook for a lot of people to make this real, just how important this is. They teach in the military techniques for people to be able to fall asleep within a very short period of time. And so there's a lot of science and research behind the breathing that helps. You know, it's always good for these girls to know that they're important and they matter. We talk about challenging negative thoughts. We always do a mental health check-in, so I have them rate their mood 0 to 10, but then I also have them punch this button every time. And sometimes the number and what they punch here are different, so it's good to get information in different ways. So it's always important for the girls to feel welcome, to feel important, and to feel like they are cared for. So the tingling you feel in your face and the tingling you feel in your fingers and your toes when you're feeling anxious is literally you are not getting enough oxygen to your fingers. You are not getting enough oxygen to your cheeks. So it feels like prickling. So that's why when we practice in here, so everybody in your left hand, you know which one's your left hand? It's the one that makes the L? Your left hand. Okay. All right, so picture in your left hand your favorite flower, whatever color it is. So I want you to hold your flower, Aaliyah. Sniff your flower in your left hand. Big one. Now, your choice. You either get to blow out a birthday candle or blow bubbles. So this is what you do when those feelings start happening. When you're at work and you start feeling like, ugh, I feel like that tiger's starting to chase me. When you're feeling like my aunt is starting to say things that are making me mad. What you're doing, what you're doing is you're taking the baby breaths from your chest. And what that does is not get oxygen to you. So then your brain thinks, there is something really, really wrong with me because my heart is beating like crazy. I'm feeling numb in my face. My fingers are tingling. And so the whole reason that you're feeling panicked is also the way that you can feel better. Always use them at work. Can you exercise at work? Can you listen to music at work?
Yeah.
Don't have that option. You can, exactly. You don't have that option. Can you talk to friends at work?
Don't have that option.
You can do the I feel. You can do the breathing. And you can think in your mind. Do you have a place in your mind that makes you feel peaceful?
In her office. Well, you can't go to her office.
So I understand that you cannot always do all these things, but think about what is available to me where I am in that moment. In terms of self-efficacy, it's important for girls to understand that up until this point in their life, they've had not as much control over their lives. They're all in this place because they have not been safe at some point in their life. And so they have a lot of shared experiences. And that's why I encourage them to really stick together and to help and to support each other because they have a lot more in common than they realize they do. A big part of every group is affirmations that we do out of here, and the girls help me write these. I do let them, if they want to look on their phones to help come up with new affirmations, sometimes we'll do that as a group activity. So they've helped to write all of these, and at the end of group, they go around and they pick one, and we talk about how, is this something that you already know about yourself, or did you need a reminder? And they're mostly words that start with I. So this one says, I can be trusted. And so I have them just pick one, and then it usually hits home with them. They'll read it out loud, and then they'll talk about it and talk about, you know, some of these are hard for these young women to talk about. They don't necessarily feel coming into group initially that they are worthy, that they are loved, that they are appreciated, that they're trustworthy, that they're capable of making good decisions. But I believe that group helps them to see others in the same situation. I think providing clear, consistent in school. I think having a safe routine helps a little bit, just knowing it's a safe place for them to talk. Affirmations build on the basic theory in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is that your thoughts really do affect your behavior. So if you walk out around in the world thinking, I'm really not a good person, I've really been damaged and hurt in life, and I'm not capable of doing good things, then probably your behaviors will follow. But if you wake up in the morning, and I give the girls mirrors, and we write on poster boards, and we write on mirrors with dry erase boards, where if you say to yourself in the morning, I am capable of great things, I can help a friend today, I am loved, I am supported, I am cared for, I can make great decisions in life, then you know, your behaviors will follow.
Sometimes you hear the student, both are okay.
Do you think that's true? Do you think sometimes that people are teaching you things, but do you think sometimes that you teach other people things?
Yes.
So was that something you already knew, or was that just a reminder for you?
I already knew something.
What's the one thing you've taught somebody before?
I actually taught my teacher this today that they clean up, the Coke that we drink, they clean that up on the side of the road with blood. Like if there's blood stains
Seriously?
on the road,
Wow.
then they get the Coke and then spread that on it.
And we drink
cleans out.
that.
Wow, she's so
Yeah, now I don't want to drink Coke. I don't
I see girls growing in a number of ways. I see them being able to come in and know that there is a routine, to know what's to be expected. I see a willingness for them to share their emotions and their mood. I see a willingness to try new coping skills that they haven't tried before, a willingness to engage in resolving some conflicts that girls have with each others, teaching skills to say, I feel blank when you, instead of starting a sentence with you. So I think this gives the girls skills when they are at work to help resolve conflicts at work and school. And really they're learning to develop and maintain healthy friendships. I think these young women have moved a lot in their lives, and they have a very hard time making friends and sustaining friendships, and so it can feel very lonely. But group is always a time where we come together and we laugh, and I think the girls begin to trust each other, and I think that shows in the relationships they're able to have in school and their jobs and their communities, and just to feel better about who they are.
Okay, so we are going to pause on this for a minute. If we have time, I'll come back to some further comments, but you can see that sometimes our coping skills also overlap with some of our self-efficacy. I think the clinicians that I work with tend to try to have all of those elements wrapped together, and some additional times that they can practice those. But I also want to move on to the next video, which is more of our goals group, and where we have taught a session on advocacy. And this is done in the kitchen. We had to take advantage of a hurricane day when the kids were off school. So we kind of stayed close and stayed in the group home kitchen. So, but it made for great footage. So go ahead. Thanks.
What these goals are, you know that all of us have what an ISP, which is an individual service plan. You know, you come into Dr. Laura's office and we talk about the goals that you have already achieved.
like the 90-day, 30-day, etc.
Yes, ma'am. So you have all achieved some goals so far, but think of some goals that you want to achieve now. So when you come for your next round of ISPs, you're going to present these. It's for anybody who works on your team. Say it could be a life skills coach, or sometimes Miss Rashida, because she's at the Strive Center.
What about Miss Sierra?
Yes, Miss Sierra, as the house manager, she could be a part of your team as well. So anyone who has an interest in your welfare that you work directly to for different services, they could be on your team for when you have your individual service plan meeting. which is in different intervals. You start at 7 days when you first get there, then 30. Most of you, except for Lacey, have completed your 30 days. Then 90, and it's in different increments, okay? We are talking about goals. So on the 13th, I forgot why you were out of school, but no, it was in the afternoon. We talked about goals. So what I need for you to do today, each of you are receiving 3 goal sheets. Demetria talked about one this morning that she wants to achieve. And so what you do is write a separate goal on each of these sheets. I need you to be focused. I need you to be thoughtful. Just a moment. I need you to be thoughtful in what you're working on, because you're going to think of the goal that you want to achieve. And make this goal something that you want to achieve, say in the next 6 or 8 months.
So it's a long term and not short.
This one might be a short term. It could be either or, depending on what the goal is and how many steps are involved. Demetria, tell me the goal that you talked about this morning.
I had 3, but
What was the main one?
was to vote
Mm-hmm.
because I'm 18. The other one was to study for, I think it was state test.
Learner's permit.
Yeah, learner's permit.
You'll also think of the steps that are involved to reach this goal. Your goal is to push your grade up higher. What are some steps that you will need to take in order for that to happen?
Can I use an example?
Just a moment.
Well, for healthcare, my teacher gave me an extra credit so that I can push my grade up higher.
Okay, so that will be one objective. Put it right there on this bottom corner.
So, kind of exactly what they were talking about with self-advocacy. There are 3 keys to self-advocacy. So you're gonna, step 1, communicating your interests. Step 2, recognizing your needs. And step 3, understanding how to help yourself. So I have a scenario here. You're getting your nails done and they're too long. We've all gone through going to the nail salon and not liking how they're coming out. So to communicate your interests, you're gonna go in and immediately, say what you want. I want my nails short. Recognizing your needs, well, I need my nails short because my job doesn't allow long nails. Understanding how to help yourself. Understand that you are a paid customer and you should be happy with what you paid for. So I know that's kind of a smaller example about nails, but that's just kind of to show you the steps. So when you're advocating for yourself, like Aaliyah just did, she's communicating her interests, that she's having a hard time sleeping because of the noise. Your needs. I need that to not be blowing around in the wind because it's so loud. Understanding how to help yourself. Understanding that, your needs are important and your sleep is important, so communicating that to the people that can help you. I want you to be somebody and I'm gonna advocate to you about what I need.
I can be Dr. Laura.
You're gonna be Dr. Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Laura. I don't wanna work tomorrow.
Well, you kind of have to, because it's not an option. You have those.
Okay, now, let's do it all over again. Hi, Dr. Laura. I actually have an appointment tomorrow at about noon. I'm wondering if I can take the morning off. I can make up the time next week, or I can maybe cover a shift. But I really need to go to this appointment.
This was let me talk to my staff, because they may have a suggestion for me, or say, well, I think they should wake us up early.
Or they can probably take.
Yeah, they could probably take you if there's not on schedule, or I don't know. Some Dr. Laura would probably say let me talk to Miss Ken or Miss Caroline and see if they have a wiggle room, or whatever the case may be.
Okay. When I came in and explained what it was I needed,
What was your
how-
needs? You're recognizing your needs and how to help yourself.
Mhm.
Or something.
Yep. Okay.
See, I didn't even need that right.
That was a good idea.
Okay, so I know that some of you, the volume, I don't know if it was the YouTube processing or whatnot, kind of was lower. Hopefully, you will have the links as part of this PowerPoint and you will be able to go and watch them again. But I wanted to really emphasize the direct instruction. I mean, we really go through them. We literally teach steps. We give them practice. We role play with them. We do all of these things. And then when we go out into the community, you know, we cue them and we try to help them practice those in more of a authentic setting. Okay, so while we're going on to the next piece, I wanted to give you some understanding of what we do with our curriculum. So this particular slide is a variety of different curriculums. I just made up this little table for you so that you could see curriculums that are out there. There's the SDLMI, the Me lessons, the Choice Maker, and another one that's Whose Future Is It Anyway? Now, these are developed by amazing people. First one, Carrie Sjogren, she happens to be the current president of the American Association for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities right now. And she is amazing. And she is at KU and SDLMI. I've seen it presented. It's wonderful. The Zaro Institute did the next two. And then the last one, Wemeyer, he is also at KU. I told you earlier that he was one of the key researchers. And then, of course, the Zaro Institute, I spoke just quickly about my mentor, Jim Martin, being part of the Zaro Institute as well. All these lessons are wonderful, and you are welcome to go to any of these resources and seek them out. I think one of them, I think Choice Maker has some fees associated, but most of these you can just use free with their resources. So go ahead and do the next switch. However, I don't use any of these curriculums. Not to say they're not wonderful, but I'm kind of a practical sort of person, one of those teachers that, you know, tends to not want to reinvent the wheel. And we have two particular curriculums that we use at Safe Harbor Strive Transitional Living. And those two are Overcoming Obstacles, which actually is a curriculum that was developed for high school students, and it's more of a classroom based, so it's pretty intensive. In fact, if I have the downloaded file, which you can get for free, it is 800 pages. It is, and it has a teacher guide with it, the whole 9 yards. And it was developed through the Department of Labor. And that particular report is a little bit older, but the SCANS report is the Secretary's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills report. And basically they put a report together saying, these are all the skills that we need to teach our kids in high school for them to actually be employable when they get out. So there are 12 modules in this particular curriculum. Out of those 12, the 5 that I have listed on this slide, building confidence, communication, setting and achieving goals, decision-making, and problem solving, directly relate to self-determination. Now, this is not all of the elements of self-determination, but they are definitely within the curriculum. I can point to them and pull that out. I also supplement with an additional curriculum, which is a really interesting one. And that's from Dr. Helfrich. I want to say her name is Nancy, but I may be making that up. She is from Boston University. And the curriculum was actually a curriculum that was developed through a grant for adults who were homeless and that needed to learn or life skills. And so she went and did a study as well. And that's in part of your handouts that I will be sending out. That shows her results, but it has 4 big modules, and these are really for basic reading skills. I like them because they work well for my kids with disabilities because they are structured in a way that are easy to understand and not overly complicated. But we have 4 modules of money management, home and self-care, safe community participation, and food and nutrition management. And you would think, okay, none of this has to do really with self-determination. But when I go through and I look at the individual lessons, I pulled out, a handful here that are at the bottom of this particular slide. And I can see that, okay, setting financial goals. When I teach that lesson, I can go back and use our goal setting techniques that we have learned already, and I can shore them up, or I can teach those goal setting techniques in this lesson. Budgeting decisions, that's decision making. Money management difficulties and solution, that's problem solving. Learning to use health resources, that's advocating and using resources. Communicating with healthcare professionals or communicating with authorities, again, that's that advocating and communicating, which is a sub skill. My money, my rights, and then assertiveness skills. All of these things tie to self-determination. So whether you use it to teach those skills and you take some extra time to maybe embed some more specific direct instruction on those skills, or whether you use them to practice those skills once you've directly taught it, either way it works, but you just have to be cognitive of what you've already got. Both of these are free, by the way, and I have a handout that not only specifies the research behind them, but also gives you a way that you can access them. And it says do not copy on them, but you have to ask permission, and I have asked permission for both of these. It's not difficult, and they are there for you. They're kind of tried and true. They're oldies but goodies kind of thing. All right, next slide. Useful assessments. Now, there are lots of assessments, and we use several. There are, as you can see in the author column, there's some of our great researchers already. In one of the, in that third research article, I talked about the youth that were followed for 3 years, how they gained in all of these different self-sufficiency skills. Well, they assessed that on the ARC self-determination scale. And even though it has nothing, Weimar and Zarrow Institute are not connected, they're 2 different universities, Zarrow Institute actually makes it available on their website. So you can go and look at that. The AIR self-determination scale is another one put together by Columbia University, and that's not only at the Zarrow Institute, but it is at its own website, which is air.org. And then ChoiceMaker goes along with the ChoiceMaker curriculum. And that's also on Zarrow Institute, specifically because it is by Jim Martin. Now, the one that I use, and I haven't gotten any results yet because I'm just, I did some pre-testing with it, is the RISC 25. And that was developed by Connor and Davidson from Duke University. And I did pay a very nominal few dollars to get the rights to use it for my group of kids. I just had to basically email him. And this is, they have several different versions, but this one is for youth for that age. And there's 25 different questions, and it kind of rates their level of resilience, not of self-determination, but I'm trying to determine if the ability to put self-determination in place impacts resilience, and I'm still working on that. And then the Child and Youth Resilience Measure is by Unger from Dalhousie University in Canada. That's also available by just asking to utilize it. So there's lots of resources out there. And I think somebody asked about the report. That might be the SCANS report, Secretary's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills report. But I do have the PDF. You don't have to search for it. I will send it. Okay, and so the last part, go ahead and switch the screen. I kind of wanted to have a discussion and just kind of get some feedback. I am happy to, and I have some lovely moderators here that, due to my internet connection issues, they kind of took over for me. So they're happy to let you have the mic. And I have 2 questions. The first one being, that should say, aspect, probably not element, because I'm not talking about the specific elements of self-determination, because we already asked that. But what aspect of self-determination do you feel deserves more attention in your programming? Is it, maybe looking at the curriculum you have, or developing or accessing more curriculum, looking at assessments? Is it the direct teaching? Is it some of those other aspects of being able to allow your youth more access to self-determination? Okay, I see assessments there. And yes, they did have the second one, the CYRM, there is a child version, and there is, both of those assessments have various ones, and they are for younger kids as well as for older adults. So, curriculum, and being able to maybe utilize what curriculum you have, and being able to maybe utilize some of the resources that yes, absolutely. Allowing youth to make decisions, even if they may fail. What I typically tell my staff is that this 18 months that I have the students in, is they've got a safety net under them. They're not going to go homeless. They're not going to go hungry. Let's allow them to make those decisions. I use a lot of natural consequences. And, let's say that we encourage them to get up and go to work, but, they've called out once or twice, and all of a sudden they come in my office and they plop in the chair and say, Dr. Laura, I don't think my manager likes me. I'm not on the schedule very much next week. I have to say, well, no, sweetie, you called out twice. And we have to make those connections for them, because they aren't going to make them. And we can't allow them to experience that on their own once they leave. We have to let them fail and learn from that. Otherwise, they are going to go homeless, and they are going to go hungry once they leave. Okay, so somebody isn't really focusing on that. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to name it self-determination for your particular program, but making sure some of those elements are there is useful. Problem solving type, yep, exactly. Okay, so the next question, what are some examples of self-determined activities that you can already identify in your program? Is there anybody? And feel free to ask for the mic or put your hand up, and they'll give that over for you to.
Yes, if anyone would like to unmute, you can go ahead and do that yourself and go ahead and answer the question.
Well, I think kind of like what you said, doing individualized service plans and allowing them to be the ones to set their own goals, and telling them that, we're never going to tell you what your goals are. We may advise you what's worked in the past for other people, but ultimately you're the one that has to complete those goals and achieve those goals you want.
When I think about our runaway program, we always talk about consent, like constantly consent, like even consent to coming into the runaway program and things like that. So I think that's one of the ways that we use self-determination, is making sure that we're getting that consent and that they understand what that consent means, and continuing to check in on whether or not they're still consenting to be there, and follow rules and expectations and all of that the whole time they're here.
Yeah, on that same note, we use the phrase youth choice a lot. So no matter if it's in regards to their stay in the program or a resource that is available to them, no matter what it is, we always emphasize, like, this is your choice. Whatever it is, we can talk through it, support you in that, but we emphasize that a lot.
Okay, anyone else? That sounds.
There's a.
Go ahead.
Motivational interviewing is used. We're trying to use it more, and a lot of that has to do with the person articulating what their goals are going to be, and how they're going to achieve those, and that's a big part of that approach. And so this seems to me to be quite compatible with that. So that's I think there's a parallel here with these approaches.
Absolutely. And we do some of the motivational interviewing types of strategies when we do our goal groups to try and get them to really access what it is that they want. Because so often they'll tell us what they think we want to hear. And that's not it. They don't understand that it's really okay to tell and to make a goal for what you want. We may not think it's the best decision, but this is really about you, and we'll help you plan for that. And, you know, honestly, it's a good process, because even when I know that a youth is heading toward a very big misstep, they see it for themselves through the process. When they're planning, it's like, oh, you know what, this really isn't going to work. But if we shut them down before they ever tried, they're just going to think that it was us, not them. So it really gives them the opportunity to make those decisions and problem solve and, you know, figure it out for themselves. Definitely, I see motivational interviewing as connecting very well. Anything else? Well, excellent. If we can go on to the next one, I just want to make sure to give you an opportunity for any other questions you have. You can definitely email me. And if we go back to that last statement, there's a picture of Neri. We love him. That's what he does. That's his job right there. It's just to be pet. Go on to this statement if you wouldn't mind. This is another one of our kiddos that is a success story for us. But, you know, taking a self-determination approach to positive youth development provides skills needed to improve the protective factors for resilience when facing adversity. And ultimately, the research is showing that it's producing greater success in health, work, school, and independent living. And that's what we're all about. So I really encourage you to kind of take some of these research and resources and kind of pick it apart. I am more than happy to connect with you and give you more collaboration. I think my contact information is in the next slide, if I'm not mistaken. No, there's the references if you need to look back at any of the things that I used specifically for this. But there is my name, my email address, and my cell and work phone. I am more than happy to collaborate and give you more information. Any major questions before we sign off? Oh, just a couple minutes, I think.
We do have about 2 more minutes if anyone else has a question, and please do fill out the evaluation link for this session, which you can find in the chat.
And a big thank you to Leslie for saving me when my internet was being unstable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this wonderful session.